subway and buses and our streets over the next like 10 plus years with the MTA's capital plan. There's a whole lot of mess going on right now, but it's something that we've been fighting for forever, essentially. And yeah, we're at the cusp of actually getting it started, but yeah, there's been a whole lot of issues involved with that with the governor and whatnot. But long story short, lots of money for transit, less cars on the street, cleaner air, safer streets.
So congestion pricing, we won that back in 2019. Obviously, we're pushing really hard for that to go through. Yes, I said.
Well, the gentleman over
Well,
here.
you guys, did you introduce yourself?
Personally.
Yeah, I'm Jolise. I'm one of the senior organizers. We can introduce staff. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm Derek Holmes. I'm the digital strategist. I write tweets and emails and stuff.
We have Selma. And then we have our two interns, Asosa and Vanessa, doing sign-in. So that's who we are. And so Better Buses, in 2019, under de Blasio, he passed a Better Buses initiative where he promised to speed up buses in the city. He did not speed buses up in the city, but that was kind of like one of the starts that we had of like our elected officials and our mayors like starting to talk about buses and the importance of speeding them up. So 2019 was important for buses on that front, and I'll go into, this is obviously Better Buses meeting, so we'll talk a lot about buses. And in 2021, we ran our first federal emergency funding campaign. We usually just do things on the campaigns on the city and state levels. But in 2021, during the pandemic, we did a federal campaign making sure that the MTA had enough money to not shut down. And then in 2023, we ran a 6-minute service campaign, and we campaigned to get buses and trains up to 6 minutes or less wait times. And we did get that on a few trains. There was no movement on buses. Is there anything you wanted to add on the 6-minute service campaign?
No, not really. It's about that. I mean, so like it was so what we did win was over $1 billion to increase subway service frequency. A lot of that went to certain lines going from like every 10 minutes on a weekday to like every 8 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is major, and it got us started with the conversation of having electeds in Albany kind of invest in better transit, like directly through service. So it's not, we haven't gotten to 6-minute service yet, obviously, if anyone here's taking the subway lately, but it is a conversation that we're continuing to have, and it was an opening that we had to really get that conversation going in our meeting. So, yeah.
Cool. Is there any, like, I can probably take a few questions about some of our campaigns that, not buses, but any of the other four mentioned?
Why is the governor, what's her stake about congestion pricing, the governor? Why is she saying she's for it, and then the next day she's against it, and then next day she's for it?
I think it's because she's catering to wealthy suburbanites. I think that would probably be my answer. Why she's flip-flopping on that. And we're hoping that she implements it before Trump gets into office.
So what happened if Trump gets into office? What will happen?
It would be harder to push it through.
Like,
I'm gonna take other questions.
okay, cool.
To back up that point, there is a court case that's being presented, which is gonna stall things. So that's part of the process, so that they can get something, and he's gonna get on for it, so.
Yeah, that's why we're really pushing to get it in before he takes office. Yeah, I know.
Because, people talking $9 out of their pocket versus $15. It doesn't make a difference. People don't wanna take money out of their pocket.
Yeah, and
So,
we,
and what's unfair is that the borough of Brooklyn, which is the closest to Manhattan, is gonna get all those drop-off traffic, stop and walk in Brooklyn and park their car, and then hop on the train system, 2 or 3 stops. And now you know Brooklyn now is not having parking spots.
so we're actually, we're doing our first lawsuit. Riders Alliance is one of the plaintiffs on a lawsuit run by Earth Justice, which is an environmental organization. And we had 3 plaintiffs sign off on that, so we're really hoping that we win that lawsuit.
So if y'all win that, what will happen if y'all win?
I think we probably want to hear from like.
No, I just want to ask a question. What will happen if we win?
And give time for I know that.
Yeah, what would happen if we win the election? What would happen if you win the lawsuit?
Chris, okay, you know what I didn't go over is group norms. So let's use I statements.
Okay.
So I'm gonna speak from my point of view, everyone else speak from your point of view. A really important one is step up, step back. So if you're the type of person that tends to speak up a lot in meetings, that's really great, but let's just be conscious of how much space you're taking up. Step back to give people a little bit more space to step forward. If you are a person that doesn't tend to speak up, we really want to encourage you to speak up and give your points of view and opinions on things. What are some other group norms?
I'm just asking what would happen if we win the lawsuit.
Oh, I think we're going over the norms.
I know we are, but after that, I want to know what we win the lawsuit.
Be respectful.
I am.
But they're for everyone, not
One
just for
mic, that's an important one, so let's speak when we are called on, and let's not speak over each other. Be respectful. What does being respectful mean to folks?
If you don't disagree with someone, that doesn't mean you're loud.
Yeah, sometimes we call that, don't yuck my yum. Is there any other group norms that we didn't mention that would make people feel good in this space? Cool, thanks. So, this is a really important slide. It has a lot of statistics that I always like to share to ground us in the advocacy work that we are doing around public transportation. So 70% of public transit riders in New York are folks of color who experience commutes that are longer by 16% than their white counterparts. 40% of essential workers take the bus, and 50% of bus riders are immigrants. New York City has the slowest buses in the whole country despite having the highest ridership. And only 30% of our subway stations are accessible, which shuts out 500,000 people. And a lot of those folks need to take the bus and rely on the bus because they simply can't navigate the trains.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about public transportation, we're really looking, this is a racial justice issue, this is an accessibility justice issue. If you look at how many essential workers are taking the bus, like it's a public health issue. These are the people that had to continue fighting and working throughout the pandemic. They didn't have the privilege of, working 9 to 5 from home. So we owe a lot to these folks, and a lot of these folks are taking the bus. It's an immigrant rights issue. So it really is a social justice issue. And I just really want to ground ourselves in that when we're fighting for this work, for these policies, like these are really anti-oppressive policies that we're trying to push through that will help the working class folks in the city that are keeping the economy going here. So is there any reflections on the statistics that I just shared? I can take a few. Yeah.
I was just going to note that when I've been at community meetings, not ones of writers, but just in general when DOT and others present about this, a lot of the voices I've heard opposed to these things tend to not reflect a lot of what's going on in, what's being reflected here. And so I think it's just really important to just have this data to make sure that we, are always understanding that even though there is sometimes a loud opposition, this is going to really benefit so many people and so many people who really need it the most.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And I think it's really important to think about that because a lot of folks that are a part of these numbers, a lot of y'all are here, but also a lot of people like essential workers, people have 2 to 3 jobs, and it's harder to get out to community meetings when you're working several jobs, when you're going to pick your kids up from school to make sure that you can make it home in time for dinner. So I think it is important to think about who's represented in the room.
So can you just call marginalized communities?
Sure.
Marginalized people? They are.
Yeah.
Marginalized people.
Just kind of bringing back the rules of how we should step in and step back.
Thank you for bringing that up. Angie, I appreciate that. Is there any other comments or reflections on these statistics and slides? Anything especially shocking? I think elevators.
Yes, I mean,
It's just elevators.
It's
it's full ADA compliant.
I'm wondering what that
I
is.
don't have the.
No, go ahead, I don't know.
I don't have like the manual on me, but it's a lot of different factors, right? So it's a matter of like, if there are stairs in a station, even if it's like a couple, right? Is there an adjacent ramp that has like the right grading, everything like that, to make sure that someone in a wheelchair is able to access all parts of that station? It's the idea that an accessible station means no matter what your ability is, you have the exact same access to mobility as everyone else in that station, which means a lot of different things technically, but from a top-down view, it's essentially getting elevators in every station that needs one. Yeah, but there's a whole lot of other considerations as well, like tactile strips, and just like making sure that people who are hard of hearing or blind are able to access transit as well. And those are like things that don't get as much shine, but the main points are like, and the most expensive and time-consuming ones are getting elevators built at all 400 of these stations. So. What was your name?
Trisha, feedback on that. Is part of the capital plan going towards accessibility?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a major portion of it is accessibility.
Yeah.
Which is a part of, not to go back to the congestion pricing conversation, but a big issue with that is the fact that the longer that program remains delayed, the longer it's going to take to be able to get the money from it. And like, MTA is already deferring like 23 at least new elevator projects throughout the city due to that. So it's like, it's in the current capital plan and the next one as well.
And we did have a really cool action recently where we went to the 11, right? Elevator stations that were supposed to get elevators with congestion pricing that got shut down when the congestion pricing was paused. So 23 stations. I think I saw.
Speaking of accessibility, like at Atlantic Avenue, Barclays, that's a big station. Right now, the R train, there's a lot of work being done on the elevators, so they're shut down. And when you talk about people that have disabilities, there should be like transit workers available near the elevators to help people like that. I mean, the average individual is just not gonna help someone. I mean, some people do, but there should be actually transit workers, say people that have like some wheelchairs. They can't get on the elevator. There's no elevator. I think transit should implement something like that. I mean, they have people standing by the gate, so people don't go in illegally. Get on the train illegally, but they can't, allocate like some employees to help people with serious disabilities, like say a walker or wheelchair. They can't get up the steps.
That's a great point, and I 100% agree with that. I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad you brought that up. Emily Rose, and then I think someone over here.
I was just gonna say, I couldn't see who initially asked the question about what does accessibility mean. I think that the city is piloting in a couple of stations those screens where if you're deaf, you can have an interpreter speak in sign language to you. Like it's like a specific app, and they put it on those screens, and so you can like use it to interact and kind of like communicate and ask questions and get help. So I know that's one thing that the city is piloting. I don't know where it'll go.
I haven't heard about that. And it's like the technology exists. It happens in other parts of the world. Like the technology is there. It just takes us pushing the city and state to implement it in our system.
Right.
I just want you to say that when I hear about what it needs to make the station accessible, it also just makes me think like it's better for everybody. Because like, if I'm tired, if I'm having a trip, or I'm, suddenly having this ability that I didn't expect, this is like a kind of like it's good for everybody, it's not, just want to say it's good for everybody.
No, I always, so if you ever, whether or not you're currently disabled, at some point you probably will be, but the second part of that is, if you've ever had like a cart full of stuff, something like that, and you've had to navigate the accessible subway system, you ever have to like go 3 stations down to go to an elevator, to go over an overpass to come come back down to go to another. It's a totally different system for folks, and that's what you're getting at. Like, everyone should have access to the same transit system, and like by that, yeah, it shouldn't matter. Yeah, that's great.
And it's like, folks use it over your desk, you have to take it will be someday, like everyone, stuff happens all the time for folks to get older, yeah.
Now I gotta walk a lot.
Let people know in advance what particular station something is not open, so that you can make those plans in advance to say, okay, I have to take another route, or I have to make that long extension to get to another service as well. You know, you get there and you see the escalators not running, you know, explicit words from somebody about, so you sort of, okay. And whether you're injured or getting old and whatnot, as you say, you may have luggage, you may be just tired, you know, from your day's work. So the easiest and convenience of those new apparatuses are important.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. That covers the first part. So we're actually, so just to introduce the next part of the presentation today. So we have been working really hard organizing our campaign to speed up buses on Flatbush Avenue. We started organizing back in January, canvassing, recruiting new members, and having community meetings like this to really just learn about people's experience taking buses along Flatbush Avenue. And we heard from a lot of folks, and we are currently working on a research project with Pratt Center where we surveyed over 1,800 folks over the summer. Associate was one of our amazing survey canvassers. And, you know, like, we're finding a lot of the things that many of you probably experience. People are waiting for a long time for their buses to come, oftentimes in extreme weather conditions. It was a very hot summer, and winter's coming, and people are boarding overcrowded buses, just to get stuck in traffic. And I think that's part of a lot of the work that we're doing is we really want the mayor and our elected officials to hear us when we say, like, this is not okay, this is not acceptable. And so DOT has made some proposals about some projects that would speed up buses on Flatbush Avenue. So they're here to just talk a little bit about what some of those improvements could look like. So they're gonna give about a 15-minute presentation, and then we'll have some Q&A after that, just to start thinking about what is possible for us on Flatbush Avenue in order to speed up the bus.
Before we get started, I just have a question for folks, like, just by a show of hands. If you do live near or around Flatbush Avenue, who here lives like south of Eastern Parkway? Okay.
South is like going like to Canton, like Flatbush Extension. That's south.
So the reason why I ask that is because we'll get into it, but we'll be looking at a DOT proposal for the northern end of Flatbush Avenue, and a part of what we want this conversation to be about is just giving you some ideas about what's possible, what's on the table, so we can start thinking about what communities south of Eastern Parkway can get on Flatbush Avenue as well to speed up buses there. So don't be alarmed if it doesn't seem relevant to you. It absolutely is. The reason why we're here is so we can work towards getting some of these improvements all along the corridor from like Dumbo to Kings Bluff. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Thanks, Dad. Okay, so I will introduce Lou.
I'm sorry, for the 18,000 people surveyed, was that just about Flatbush Avenue or about citywide?
Just Flatbush Avenue. So this campaign is specific to Flatbush Avenue. We have done, other smaller bus campaigns throughout the city, but this one is particular to Flatbush Avenue. Thanks, Lou. Everyone, this is Lou from DOT.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about Flatbush Avenue.
Give us your last name.
Yes, sorry. Thank you so much. My name is Luke Zavados. I am a project manager in the bus priority unit in the transit development unit. I could keep on going, but I work for DOT, long story short. And today we're talking about Flatbush Avenue. Here, a lot of people might wonder why Flatbush Avenue. Well, this corridor, as all of you know, is a major corridor in Brooklyn with connections to job centers, housing, entertainment, culture, shopping, and recreation. It also has immense transit connections with Atlantic Terminal, the Long Island Railroad trains, 9 subway lines. It intersects with the 2 and 5 trains at Nostrand and the BQ and S trains at Prospect Park. So there's a lot of reasons why, for just transit connectivity, moving tons of people throughout the city, Flatbush Avenue, we need it to perform better. In terms of bus performance, over 132,000 people ride the buses along Flatbush Avenue every single day. That's across 12 different routes. The B41 alone serves over 28,000 average daily riders, and it has very slow bus speeds, especially in the northern Brooklyn section. I'm getting some hot head nods. We all have experienced that. In the downtown section, we see below 4 miles per hour, which is essentially walking speed. That's unacceptable. In terms of safety, Flatbush Avenue is a Vision Zero priority corridor, which you might know is this metric that we use to classify different roadways in terms of how safe they are for pedestrians, drivers, and transit riders. Flatbush Avenue is, we'll get into these stats, it's a Vision Zero priority corridor, needs a lot of safety improvements. It has 11 Vision Zero priority intersections, so that means that 11 intersections along Flatbush Avenue are especially egregious, and it intersects with 18 other Vision Zero priority corridors. So we have a lot of work to do, but safety is a critical component to our toolkits and the project implementation. The downtown section ranks within the top 10 of the highest crash corridors in Brooklyn, with 55 people killed or severely injured since 2019. Flatbush Avenue is also located within a priority youth injury area. So for people of all ages, improving safety, transit on Flatbush Avenue is critical. In terms of the demographics of Flatbush Avenue, we've analyzed all the different community boards that intersect with the corridor, and there are almost 1 million residents alone across all of these community boards. That's community boards 2, 6, 8, 9, 14, 17, and 18. And you can see them here sectioned out. It wouldn't be surprising to many of you that 76% of people who live in these districts along Flatbush Avenue commute to work by public transit, walking, or biking. It speaks to the importance of improving transit service on Flatbush. Citywide, the bus rider median annual income is lower than drivers, $30,000 a year versus $47,000. And I'm sure that disparity may have changed a little bit based on these statistics, but that's just to show that when we improve bus service, we're really targeting those people in our city who are among the lowest paid people and most deserving of a better quality of life. 69% of these residents are non-white, and that further breaks down into 44% Black, 12% Hispanic, 7% Asian, and 7% other. There are multiple senior and youth injury areas along the corridor. So again, these are areas that we've done a lot of analysis to determine that seniors and youth are especially vulnerable to traffic crashes. We're splitting this project up into 3 different segments. This upcoming year is the northern Brooklyn segment, which you might have seen at some community board meetings.
we're going to be talking about it in further detail tonight. The next phase of the project is the Prospect Lefferts Gardens middle section of the corridor, and it goes to about Avenue H, and then the southern portion is the Southern Brooklyn section. These sections are very different in terms of demographics, in terms of different corridor needs, residents versus commercial districts, access to transit. The downtown segment has the slowest bus speeds, some of the best transit connections. There's also the Manhattan Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, the BQE traffic. So it's a really complicated segment. The middle section, as I saw some people with their hands raised, you might be familiar with, it's plagued by double parking and congestion. Small businesses with intense loading needs are located along this corridor. It has the highest ridership, but still suffers with slow bus speeds. The narrow road width is a little bit challenging when it comes to options for what we can do. And it has connections to the 2-5, B, Q, and S trains. The Southern Brooklyn section is much wider, especially south of Utica Avenue. It's lower density, so you don't see all of these high rises as you see further downtown. And it has fewer connections to subway lines, which essentially means that improving bus service is really essential.
Does each of those represent a year?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
We haven't necessarily, plotted all of those out.
Speaking
let's
of
just pull up
last,
questions if you don't mind
Yeah.
for the end. So the current project phasing, as I mentioned, we're currently looking at a round of design options for the downtown section. As we mentioned, it's got very slow bus speeds. Bus improvements on the section would impact all throughout the corridor. So just like when the train, as I experienced this afternoon, has an emergency brake failure or something like that, a lot of consecutive trains block up, and that causes congestion and delay all the way down. Similarly, if you have immense traffic in downtown Brooklyn, you're going to see a lot of that ripple effect all the way down. So we really believe that improving bus performance in the downtown section is going to improve transit access for people all throughout the corridor, but we are still going to proceed with phasing for these middle and southern sections. So for the downtown Brooklyn section, this is from Livingston Street to Grand Army Plaza. We are looking at 3 different configurations. The first is curbside bus lanes. So you've probably seen this throughout the city. It's right along the curb, and it allows for additional traffic capacity. So if you have a curbside bus lane, that might mean you can have 2 different travel lanes in each direction if your road is wide enough. However, it doesn't allow for parking access whenever the bus lane is active, and it can frequently be blocked by traffic. The second option preserves parking along the curb while also allowing for vehicular access on each block. The bus lane itself is offset from the curb, so you have your sidewalk, a lane of parked cars or trucks loading, and then you have the bus lane, and then you have a normal driving lane. These perform way better than curbside lanes, and they allow buses to pass each other at bus stops. It also allows for parking and loading. Businesses, we can't live in modern age without our deliveries, and this type of design allows for those deliveries to still happen. So they're less likely to be blocked by parking and loading. So this is we think, a really strong proposal. And we'll just mention that on Lexington Avenue, we saw, when we implemented offset bus lanes, we saw injuries decrease by 24%, and weekday peak bus fees increase up to 19%. The third design option is a center running bus lane. You might have seen this if you've traveled internationally, a lot of places do this now, where you have a transit way right in the middle of the street. This is kind of similar to what we want to achieve here with buses. And the bus lanes are in the middle of the street, and what's great about this is that you don't have the bus right in between the drivers and the parked cars. The bus kind of operates in this segment of the street all of their own, and we have, as you can see in this photo, you've got a protected bus boarding island here, and traffic can go around it. Buses can also pass and unload passengers. So whenever we implement these types of bus lanes, they see the best performance in terms of speeds, reliability, and they also have a great safety impact because you're building so much physical pedestrian infrastructure in the road. So yeah, I've mentioned minimizing bus vehicle conflicts because you separated them from the curb. And what's also really nice about this is that it allows for ADA accessibility. So whereas if somebody's blocking your bus stop and parked in your bus stop, your bus driver has to just get off, let you off in the middle of the street, and you have to contend with whatever curb or no curb there is. Here, the bus drivers are able to pull up right next to this bus boarding island and depart. Has anybody seen a bus boarding island before?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
On Lipson Avenue.
Awesome.
Livingston.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a
Can you
good one.
just explain that? Because it looks like there's only one travel lane for buses, is that correct? So what if they're going north and south?
So
Is it a little bit of chicken with the bus driver?
Not intentionally.
Well, I know, but I mean, I'm just.
So for this lane right here isn't a marked bus lane, as we can see, but and that is a great little bit of feedback. We'll try to improve some of the visual representations here. In the next couple of slides, you'll see a little bit better what this means. But essentially, what we try to do is we have these two bus lanes moving in opposite directions, and ideally they're physically separated from the rest of traffic, either through these called quick curb or through a pedestrian island. But yeah, the idea is to separate the modes as much as possible, just like you have your bike lane separated from your bus lane and your car lane and everything. And that's where we can see the best benefit in terms of each mode. So here's kind of those three options laid out on Flatbush Avenue. This is right at 6th Avenue and Bergen Street. You can see the curbside bus lane is right along the curb, and it allows for 3 travel lanes in each direction. Yep. This design retains parking where the bus pulls to the curb only at the bus stops, but then it operates in these offset bus lanes where they're driving between drivers and the parked cars. So, in terms of business needs and people's ability to access the curb who aren't a bus, this is a little bit more preferable. And in this option, you can see that a little bit more clearly that physical bus boarding island, it's totally separated from cars, and that is a really great improvement for pedestrian safety because every bus rider is a pedestrian. And it stretches the whole block with ADA access on each side, and yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about that. Yeah, so here's a rendering in 3D of what this could look like. The project is not set in stone in terms of design quite yet, but I think that's all the slides.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we really love the idea of the center running bus lanes. We know that it's a really ambitious project that we hope happens. And you can and then we can take some. Oh, there's a lot of questions. Okay, I'm gonna start with Krishna.
I like the center bus lane. Is the stop on the island? Bus stop? Or
Yeah, so it would stop on the island itself.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to pull up that 3D rendering. So, yeah, the bus would come up here, and then it would discharge passengers right here, and you have to walk towards the nearest crosswalk, because we have to put these pedestrian fences here. We've done this on E.L. Grant Highway in the Bronx, and you know, just for everybody's sake,
Okay, can we just use the alley that we have out of the library? Is everyone familiar with that now? Okay, you have the, bus stop on the alley, you have the ramp that comes on the side, you have the cycling lanes on both ways. I don't see how that's safe. Because even you coming off the bus now at this hour and you stop, you start down, the cyclists will go ahead, go with the street bus, may not have any traffic, there's no riding out there. You stepping backwards to the curb to get on the street curb. Doesn't make sense. I don't know who designed that. Then if you go down to the north side, here where the cross is, there's no ramp. So you gotta step down, so if you got leg issues or what, there's no rail, no ramp, no. Who designed it?
So what we aspire to do in all of our bus boarding is to make it so that you can fit on both sides. And what that means is stretching that bus boarding island all the way across the entire block.
Okay, that's fine, but where's the ramp?
That's you're identifying a really great point, and it's something that through our the future of our design we're trying to prioritize. It's sometimes challenging. There's a lot of different competing needs, and we're not always able to make it that long depending on what the block is. But I hear you, and that's a very serious concern that we're trying to do a survey actually of how people feel about bus boarding islands, and this is really great feedback.
Yeah, and if you wanna send that around too.
Yeah, can I say, so the point that you were making just there, it's like this idea, like, there's finite street space and there's a whole lot of needs. They're sometimes conflicting and trying to make things as safe and convenient as possible and just keeping all sorts of traffic, whether it's like pedestrian traffic, bikes, or buses, or cars moving and flowing, like, there's a lot of trade-offs involved in like getting things absolutely perfect and like, the
I
design.
understand that,
Yeah,
Dave,
well,
but this is too simple.
No, let me say,
If
but
you
the
do
design
a
out there right
ramp
now.
at one end, and all it is sloping the sidewalk and making a ramp at the other, because the ramp at the southern end puts you in direct, it's not the curvy
No, I get what you're
of the
saying.
drivers coming on the other side, so you can cross to get to the main business, which is probably the highway.
I want to say, I agree with you, just the overarching point is that what you're getting at is good, because like it talks about the different conflicts on the street that we have to keep in mind when we're deciding as a community, like what do we want to see, how do we want to see it designed.
These comments that they made to MTA on their survey.
Well, and I think that's part of the reason we're here is that we can build power to make sure that we are making sure that our elected officials are taking all of these concerns in so that they are doing what they need. They are public servants and they need to be addressing that issue that you're bringing up.
And one thing that often happens is when we have those full-length bus boarding islands that allow you to disembark on each end of the bus boarding island, we get complaints from business owners who said, hey, you've taken all of the parking on my street. So it's a challenge to balance. We're in the bus priority unit and we're trying to make things as good as they can be and very quality service for bus riders.
So the other alley that you have, which is on Livingston Street, that's right in front of Macy's, is that, what happens to that? Because you got most people get off that want to go to Macy's, and then you got them where they have to walk all the way back down.
Right.
Okay, so I'll just let you answer this and then I'm gonna go on to other comments.
So they probably have to walk all the way down because there's a fence there, right?
Yes, they just put that up.
Yeah, and the reason why I put that fence in, even though jaywalking is legal now, we don't feel comfortable letting people walk right next to each other.
Yes.
Give it a try.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm gonna go here, 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 there. Okay, so I got it. Okay.
Hear me?
sorry. Are you just looking for, comments on this option or the whole?
Anything. If you wanna talk
So,
about anything.
I'm with the community garden on the corner of Flatbush and Pacific Street. And what we're seeing is the problem, and you must know about this, at Chick-fil-A, where DOT
There's a lot of
took
drama.
away, there were 3 lanes there going south on Flatbush. They took away 1 lane to give the bike messengers.
Yeah.
Because they became a ghost kitchen during COVID, and it continues there. And it's still a problem, people double park then. And so now those 3 lanes are down to 1 lane because they're double parking, including the cops, to pick up the food at Chick-fil-A. So if something isn't done for that, that's why I'm not really excited. But they want that first lane, so probably that second one is a better vote. But problems like that, if there's no enforcement, and that's the problem now. There's no enforcement for those double parkers. And in the garden, we're just sitting all day, except for Sundays because they're closed because they're
The great thing with bus lanes is that they're photo enforceable. So that's one thing that, we're not just gonna put paint down and hope for the best.
Oh, against cops? Yeah. That's the question. Because between Dean Street and St. Mark's, every metered spot
Yeah,
is
it's
occupied.
a huge issue, and I think that's why we really advocate for protected lanes, so that cars don't even have the choice. But yes, the police finding is a whole separate issue. How are we gonna ask for enforcement from the folks that are not?
Well, the thing is then you've had two sections of society. They get privileges that people in the neighborhood don't get, and the merchants don't have churn on the parking spaces.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. The real question that I have is the width of the road big enough to do all of these loads?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's 60 feet wide, south of Atlantic Avenue, and 70 feet, and maybe a little bit more north of Atlantic Avenue. That does afford us, we can't put these 2 bus boarding islands right next to each other, but we can kind of offset them and have the bus meander from one to the other. But yeah, that is a serious consideration that our traffic engineers are looking at, and we won't prove anything unless it can be.
Thank you.
Even south of Atlantic, the center
Hold
line.
on, we have staff, and I missed someone.
My question is about, so I'm really glad to see all of these ideas for physical infrastructure, which I think are so needed and important. But in the meantime, and especially for, the further down project, a little farther in the future, I'm sure my fellow B41 riders can back me up that one of the biggest problems 41 and other buses face is the bunching.
Yeah.
There's no bus for 25 minutes, and then there's 4 of them all at once. Are there any short-term solutions before we get the physical infrastructure implemented with the timing and spacing of the buses?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and unfortunately, there's a little bit of this that is out of our control. As the City Department of Transportation, a lot of the bus bunching that you identify is dependent on the timing and frequency of bus drivers from their depots. So that is a MTA issue. We're trying to design a system that can eliminate bus bunching, but some of this is unpredictable, and we're not able to fully control that aspect of service. But it's something that whereas bus bunching might be caused by traffic delays, this is a eliminating that traffic.
Yeah. And I would say there might not be anything that can really be done until we really do the implementation that we need. And I think that's why we're here today, so that we can, get together and speak up about this.
I will add, speak up.
Yeah, so we've actually added a few signal timing improvements south of Grand Armored Plaza as well. So what they do is we have bus queue-jump signals, so once the bus reaches the intersection, they get priority of a few seconds head start. There's 10 signal priority in in multiple intersections on the corridor, that can be the bus construction intersection.
Yeah, so two of these have already been installed. I'm not sure if you've seen the Empire Boulevard bus queue jump signal. So it takes advantage of an interval, which is that sometimes you get a walk sign in advance of the drivers. And so when the buses are moving in the same direction as the walk sign, we give them the bus only signal. And we're making these three. We've already finished these two, and we have one to complete, I think by the end of this week, hopefully. But these are improvements that we're also hoping to add throughout the corridor entirely.
Speaking of which,
I think these are really great, like I've seen the Parkside one, but I think there's no reason why a bus should have to wait for a pedestrian running parallel to it if it's going straight, but I've noticed that at Parkside for the 41, it only really works if the bus is at the very front of the queue, because otherwise the cars in front of it won't be able to go, and it'll just get stuck behind those until the regular car light turns green. So I think, I've noticed the 12 it actually works, because the stop is pushed right up to the intersection, but it would be, but yeah, going along Flatbush, like, we don't really have an impact on the 41, so it'd be nice if there was like maybe like a couple spots removed to extend the northbound stop, so that buses could, like, move.
I love these ideas. Yeah, this is something we're actively looking at, and we're going back and forth with some of our engineers. You know, we're trying to evaluate it right now, but you bring up a really great point that unless the bus stop is right at the near side of the intersection, you're not going to exactly benefit. So you're absolutely right. It's a little bit of a gamble whether the B41 will be there when that bus queue jump signal is there, but I believe that's not the case in both directions. I'm pretty sure that in one of the directions, it might be the southbound side, or is it?
The park side is true both directions.
Yeah,
Okay.
because the stop is on the far side of the street.
Okay, we're gonna take a look at that. Thank you so much.
Can I ask you a question? Wait, why?
No.
Why?
We have that going. I'm gonna go here and then behind. You had a question too? No? You and then right next.
Why can't I ask a question?
Because I have stat going, which means I have people that I need to call before you.
Okay, then you done. Please call me. Thank you.
Once I get to everyone else, I've
Okay.
taken up a lot of space already.
I had a clarifying question on the last slide about the center.
The center on it?
Yeah. So just to clarify, the island in the foreground of the picture only serves the buses going this way. It does not serve. I do not have to cross a bus lane to get to the buses going this way. That's what the other island is for.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So this would only serve southbound drivers or bus riders, and this would only serve northbound riders. But this is an example of the bus island you do not like. See how, if you don't mind zooming in really quick, see how it doesn't, have an exit on this side, and it only has an exit. We're trying to minimize that with the design of these, but I don't want to
So just
bring
to
up
clarify that picture, where's the cyclists and the mopeds, where's their lane?
So
Traveling right
this
across
does
that.
not have bike lanes as part of this design. Right now we're prioritizing bus riders. It's something that we've heard feedback on, and we hear you loud and clear. We're
And
also
where does the dollar van stop?
the dollar van, if they're an actual bus, they can use the bus lanes, but let's get to the next question.
Just the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I support this idea. I found the presentation of it a little confusing.
Okay.
I think the initial picture where there was only one red lane instead of two tripped me up a little. So maybe there might be a way to present it that's easier to understand.
Thank you for that feedback.
Remove that slide.
Angie, did you have a question?
Yeah, you might have to go back a few slides.
Where do you wanna go? Offset, both side, center.
Keep going.
That's what we, like, what was it?
But basically, you have it sectioned off into different parts of the route. Then what is the trajectory of time, like, timeline? Yeah.
We don't have a timeline for quite yet. You know, we hope to do this project in phases. We're prioritizing the downtown Brooklyn section first, but we haven't committed to a specific phasing for the middle section and south section yet.
So here and then right there.
Sorry to jump way back, but like, so in the images that show like the center running, like it's always showing it like above like Atlantic and 4th. Is it also considered a viable option for Flatbush, like from Atlantic to Grand Army, or is it only being considered for the top part?
The whole thing, from Grand Army, we're considering it from Grand Army to Livingston. We're looking at center running.
And do you think that it's like this is more subjective, but that it's likely to be able to get through, that there'll be the space for it, or is it just being studied?
Well, we want to advance this because it is the boldest, the most transformative, the highest impact for bus speeds. But it's challenging. I mean, there's a lot of these curbside lanes turn into rush hour lanes in the peak direction. So we've got 3 lanes of traffic that buses have to compete with, and that makes it really challenging to talk about putting in these types of proposals. So we're looking with our traffic engineers and consultants to see how to do this feasibly, but we are pushing ahead and we'll keep you posted. This later this winter, we're going to be presenting our final option.
Thank you. Are you all doing it? I know you're prioritizing buses for this project, but for the Flatbush Avenue, Atlantic Avenue intersection, like that intersection right there, that bike intersection right there is, next block, the 4th Avenue, excuse me.
Yeah.
That, it's always blocked, like by traffic, and I'm just curious if you guys know what the effect of these bus lanes will be on deconflicting that, or like, will I get less conflict when I'm trying to go between those 2 bike lanes?
So there is a project in the works. It's a capital project that we're pursuing as an agency, not affiliated with this project, to improve those connections, especially as it yeah. So, but yeah, that's something we're really conscious of, and we're trying to design this so that we can minimize those conflicts. But yeah, that's feedback well taken. I don't have an exact answer to you right now.
Liz?
Okay, so first off, I want to thank you for showing all these different options. I really hope that we can get something like the center running lanes where there's the least conflicts and the most just, buses. I would say I've seen some designs around the world where you might have a little curb or something between the bus lane and that, maybe something just to help keep cars out of it. But one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, particularly as someone who, the main buses I take are the B41, the B35, and I also take the buses on Rogers and Nostrand a lot, and from all those experiences, I can tell you that the curb runs just they get blocked in all the ways you're mentioning, and we really should be prioritizing bus riders. But something that I've thought about a lot with this in particular, I mostly ride the bus on this corridor. I'm very occasionally a cyclist. I'm never a cyclist on this corridor because it's terrifying. But there's just such a big road, and there's just, once you get off on that beautiful bus boarding island, there's just so much, still just massive car traffic that's gonna get crossed. And now, it's the one downside to me of a center running lane is that every time you get off the bus, you have to cross traffic. You have to be at an intersection with turning cars, and that just adds to the danger. And so, wondering how there could be more pedestrian improvements, but also just want to note from my riding on the Rogers and Nostrand buses, every so often we get stuck behind a bike because there's nowhere safe to bike nearby. And I know there are some other bike lanes in this area, but I do worry that people will start biking potentially on the bus lanes, and so this being not a complete street that has all of that, I want to make sure that the bus is as prioritized as possible and that the pedestrian experience once you get off the bus is as safe as possible. So we just really urge, especially because it's such a wide street, to consider other ways to calm traffic, and create dedicated spaces for other modes so that the bus can be just the bus.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And part of the reason why we're pursuing this project is because we've identified separating modes as one of the best ways to improve service for each of those modes. I'll say that bus boarding islands and these concrete physical protection elements are pedestrian improvements. So these are essentially pedestrian islands that that do exist at Atlantic and Flatbush, but they don't exist all throughout the corridor, and these create a space for pedestrians to rest if they are not able to proceed through the entire expanse.
I just want to note that, like, if you just, especially because you brought up Atlantic and like the 4th Avenue area, that I would say that those are, you know, it's good to be able to stop, but the issue isn't just about being able to walk only a small distance before you kind of break. It's about having clear space for walking and clear, you know, to not have to deal with cars trampling over all your crosswalks and so forth. And like that, just that intersection in particular, I remember a garbage truck killing people a couple years ago, and just, it's always a nightmare, as I think someone, Red Sweatshirt had also mentioned. So,
Yes.
you know, pedestrian islands are great. I think they're even better when they're the bus boarding island, but just, it's such a big street, it needs so much.
Yeah,
I do want to say I agree. It's like super. So I think the reason why like Flatbush Avenue, especially that area, feels so dangerous because it's like a 6 to like 8 lane highway or whatever. It's like, and you know, drivers they'll go as fast as like the street design allows them to, not necessarily like what the posted speed limit is, which is 25 throughout the entire city. I do think that like, you know, infrastructure that does kind of break up the street and really does take up some of that space, it's going to force people to drive slower, because if they don't, the danger is they're going to damage their car, and everyone knows that, like, you know, ending someone's life isn't what's going to stop someone from like driving recklessly. It's going to be scratching their paint. So like the less space they have to drive recklessly, the less space they have to say, oh, I can go 45 on the street because it feels comfortable. I think the slower people will go, but like I do agree additional traffic calming would be nice, but yeah, this infrastructure in itself like does act as traffic.
No, I fully agree with that.
I'll also add the capital project that Luke had mentioned is also looking to expand some of that sidewalk to create more pedestrian space on the sidewalk. It also narrows the roadway a little bit to calm that traffic even more. So we're hoping that all these things can compound to create a more safer intersection.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. Could I go back to the side running slide? Curbside. Well, I live in that slide on Flatbush. Wow. And I.
Me too.
Cool.
Oh, we're little neighbors.
Yeah.
Never I'm in that picture.
You're right about the Chick-fil-A. Yeah, but the I mean, I just want to say that I prefer the center running option in terms of managing, you know, actually having something that drivers will respect. I mean, camera enforcement's great, but we know the realities there, and that actually like moves the buses, and also anything that like meaningfully calms traffic. I've like witnessed crashes. There's so much noise pollution, air pollution. And as noted, like even if the speed limit's 25, you have the long signal timing, you have the wide roadway. That's how people will drive. I just noting on this one, it looks like some like parking lanes have been converted to bus lanes, whereas on the other one, or it seems like parking lanes are being removed in favor of travel lanes, which I think is useful, except that you then lose opportunities closer to the curb to have, you know, I don't know, delivery zones, curbside garbage collection, and then in all of these designs, you don't really have a good opportunity to daylight the intersection and really bulb it out in any way, because the crossing distances, even if you have a nice little median in the middle for the center running design, are really huge crossing distances, especially because of the angle on the long diagonals, and that's some of the like least safe components. And it would be interesting to see a design option that could also manage the corners and the corner radii and where people stand waiting to cross. as well as all of these other good solutions.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. You know, I'll mention that this concept is no way, you know, representative of our final concept. And whenever we do these ambitious projects, we try to put as much of our pedestrian toolkit out there on the street. So you might have seen Gun Hill Road bus lanes that we recently improved, put down. We've added curb extensions, pedestrian islands, you know, you name it. If we're gonna get out there on the road, we're gonna try to take advantage of every single thing we can do. So yeah, we're looking at curb extensions.
Can I just give a historical reference? What you're looking at there is an expanded triangle park in the bottom right that advocated by the North Flatbush bid. Every intersection had a bulb out, so if you think it's long now, it was 20 feet longer 4 years ago. So just so you know, there has been efforts to move that, so building on that would be great.
Yeah, and to your point about maintaining access for the different curb loading needs, we are very attentive to that, and which is why we're looking at some of these other options that can retain parking, because New Yorkers need to access the curb, whether it be through a truck or through a whole host of needs. This is also a freight corridor, so that's something we have to be attentive to too.
Sure is. Sorry, with all the honking, I know that is a lot of freight down there.
Well, if you age yourself, it's also a snow emergency route.
Okay, we're gonna go to Emily Rose and then Henry, and then we might have to close up. We only have 6 more minutes on this portion.
I have maybe will be a quick question because you might not have the answer. They brought up earlier the Chick-fil-A taking up road space. It's a business. It's hampering traffic for everyone. The new Chelsea Pier that's on Dean Street does exactly the same thing. Everyone who's waiting to pick up their kid from swimming is just parked there. You can't get in the bike lane. You can barely go in the roadway. I'm just wondering, like, is there a movement at all to be like, how are these businesses, if they build something new, if they take up a space, like, is there any way that these businesses that are taking our public amenities can be required to pay for enforcement themselves, or be required to build out, like, this is the loading zone and that's all you get? Like, what?
I don't know of any initiatives like that, but I can say that on the Upper West Side, we're piloting a smart curbs program where we repurpose and take innovative looks at how we can use the curbside lane to provide bike parking or different types of neighborhood loading zones. So that's something that, you know, when we go through this corridor, we can, in a design perspective, we can take a look at, you know, are these parking regulations really serving all the needs of the adjacent business?
Thank you.
My question was about funding. Are these 3 phases of the Flatbush Avenue project being funded as like an operational project, or is this a capital project?
This is a street improvement project, so this is a short-term project. You know, capital projects often include coordination with water mains and electrical systems to make sure that all of the improvements that we make are able to be maintained for, you know, decades to come. But this is a quicker project, so we hope to finish this in a year or 2. You know, at least that's typically how we finish street improvement projects. So our toolkit is smaller, but we can, you know, implement them faster.
Okay, I think we have a couple here.
So you're like presenting 3 options to us, and it just seems like even from when you were presenting it, like you're personally, it seems like you're in favor of the 3rd option, and it seems like the DOT being the experts in this, like they know what works, they have the statistics of like what's going to be the most efficient. I'm just like wondering in terms of like showing the support for, I guess, like the right option, like what are you looking for in terms of like broader feedback, and not like just like the nitty gritty of like iterating like on that 3rd option, but because it's just like, to me, it seems like the first option's a no-go because that's just going to be a red painted parking spot. Then the second option, like that's just gonna be a red painted double parking spot. And then the third option seems like the least likely for someone to be brazen enough to like park there, because it's just like not a safe place for them to park their car. So I'm just like wondering, like, what can we do as like citizens, like, you know, like what is DOT looking for where we can, like, because you have the stats and you know, like, if the goal is to move as many people as quickly as possible, it's like we have the answer. So I'm just wondering, like, what do we have to do to show that, like, can we just move on to like option 3 and then kind of iterating, like, similar to her comments about ramps, like where we can like fine tune it.
So I would say show up. If you want your voice heard, you gotta show up. And this is how our outreach process goes. We go in front of these different communities and we present our projects. We get feedback and take temperature checks. We love getting letters of support from elected officials, from community boards, from other stakeholders. So I think it's a process where we want to hear from you. If you like this project, if you don't like this project, we want to hear how to refine it and make it better.
Which I do want to piggyback on that. So the reason why we've organized this space is specifically for that. And, you know, talk to your elected official. Like, a lot of people here, I'm sure you have a pretty supportive council member. If you live on the north end, like Lincoln Rental would be great. But, you know, we really kind of need to interface with elected officials, because a lot of the times, if they aren't hearing from people in this room who want to see these things, they're hearing from people who do not want them at all. And again, typically these are people who, like, you know, they may have legitimate concerns, right, about, like, you know, curb space and loading and parking and whatnot, but if they're taking up all the airtime in our elected officials' ears, that's going to end up getting back to DOT, and we'll end up in a situation where, you know, Mayor Adams may take it upon himself to say this isn't happening, which is kind of a situation that a lot of really transformative projects have been in over the past couple of years. So to counter that, we need enough, like, we need like a critical mass of community voices coming together and saying, hey, we really want this. The threat being, if you don't do it, we know that you're responsible for that, and we'll vote accordingly. But yeah, that's the answer. Yeah.
And I think that's going to close out that portion.
Thank you, DOT. Enforcement, because
we're going to just close this portion out. We're just going to close this portion out. So that is a good point. I'm so glad that you asked that question and that it was the last question. Like Derek said, so 9 times out of 10, DOT wants to put these really ambitious projects in. The mayor is mandated by the streets law to implement 150 miles of bus lanes and busways throughout his administration. He's done a very, very small portion of those. And that's because oftentimes there's a lot of internal politics going on, and he's bought out by sort of wealthy car drivers, the folks that Derek was sort of talking about. There's a lot of opposition when it comes to projects like this, and that's why we're in this room, because we know from the stats I shared earlier, public transportation is a social justice issue. The bus going 4 miles per hour, that is not acceptable. And something needs to be, it's not acceptable, and our elected officials need to be held accountable to that. And that's why we're in this room. We're here to build power. And we can only do that if we're organized. We can only do that if we're organized and building power together to fight back against the opposition that doesn't care about public transportation. And so with that being said, keep showing up to these meetings. Write to your elected officials. We will have actions that you will get, you're on our email list. Take every action that we send you. Come out to as many rallies as you can. Come out to as many community meetings as you can. Because your voice matters, and it deserves to be heard. We have been working on a participatory research project with Pratt Center that I think I mentioned earlier, and we are launching the research that we found for that project on December 10th. We kind of just locked that date in, so I don't have a flyer or anything, but please keep a look in your emails for that. And we have a couple other really exciting projects coming up. We are planning a mayoral forum.
Yes.
We'll be sending all this in email. I don't think we have flyers for anything yet, but is there anything else? You look like you're gonna...
No.
Oh, okay.
I was just excited about the mayoral forum.
Okay, yes. So I hope you all can make it to those 2 events. I would like to just sort of like, maybe I can take like 2 comments of like, or 3. What are your reflections? Like, how are you feeling after this meeting? just like to close us out a little bit and ground us in closing out.
What she said.
Sure.
I think they're good, I think they're productive. I think they could be a little bit longer, so that, more people can get, an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
And to, go back to somebody else's point, cause you make notes, and when you allow someone to do the whole scenario, and then you have a question and answer afterwards, it's kind of time consuming to go back.
Yeah.
So it may be more productive to talk about the segments, the issues then, and then move forward, you know?
Yeah.
So, but it was good.
Okay, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I think it is hard to hear from everyone. Of course, we want to hear from every single person, but the reality is we only have an hour and a half, so it is hard, but that's why I encourage you to keep showing up. Keep talking to DOT and your elected officials, and we've been having these once a month. I know you've come to, this is your third one? Yay! So keep showing up so we can keep hearing your voices.
Yeah, I mean, I love what DOT's done. We worked with DOT several years ago to do all the bump outs and the Triangle Park restorations on Flatbush Avenue between Atlantic and Grand Army Plaza. But the critical piece that we never get to is how do we enforce these great designs so that what we think theoretically should work will actually work. And I think that's the elephant in the room, basically.
Enforcement.
Is that we don't have enforcement.
Yes.
And this middle section of Flatbush Avenue gets very clogged because of the number of special details out of the 78th precincts on 6th Avenue, plus their own cars, their refusal to use spaces that were offered to them at the Atlantic Yards development. All of that congests this area, so without enforcement, none of this will work.
I hear you.
And then as just an aside, when DOT instituted the bike lane on 14th Street, I worked on 14th Street and people were horrified. What happened was the bus lanes became de facto bike lanes, but it worked, and it still continues to work. So I think that's something to consider too, that there was actual, a positive consequence of this for the bikers, because they really were able to use the bus lanes as travel lanes.
I'm really glad you opened that can of worms, because it's a really big one. So I will say very shortly, what I believe personally, the real key to making sure things are enforced properly is to remove NYPD from traffic enforcement and have DOT enforce things that happen on the street. DOT will tow your shit out of there.
Yeah, but they quake in their shoes when they have to ticket police cars. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think. So taking that out of NYPD's hands, I think, will be the best way to move forward, because they've proven they can't do it or don't want to.
Yeah, but this is what I envisioned. They put up new signs on Flatbush Avenue about the bus cameras. I envisioned that every time a cop's personal car gets one of those tickets, it'll disappear. So enforcement is really the key.
We're with you. Okay, I'm sorry, I know I want to hear from everyone, but I really have to close out. So thank you all so much. Thank you, DOT, for coming. Also, okay, everyone, there's Ziploc bags over there. Please take all the meat off and take all the popcorn.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. Oh, hungry. Where's the Ziploc bags? What are Ziploc bags? Oh, wait there. Screen, please. These Ziploc, these are pandas. Coming up. Thank you. Hello. I'm going. Thank you. Thank you. I got permission to come out. The pizza in here. The pizza, wait, is pizza in here? Oh, they took a long damn. No, it's okay. No, she gave it to me.
I'm sorry?
She gave it to me.
Yeah, it's for members. She made a mistake.
Oh, okay, good. No problem. So, I'm leaving now. So. I actually got a message call, but they took it back. I don't give a shit. So. We'll come anyway. So it was a great time tonight. So I'm leaving. Gotta walk up the stairs and then get out of here. They lock. They do it on purpose with the door. So yeah. Queen's here. Alright, good. I got some food. That's what I think so. Closed at 8 now. Holy shit! No wonder why. I thought it closed at before. He closed at 9 o'clock, but I think because of Eric Adams doing his cuts, and they had to bring back the Sunday hours. But they probably cut some deal where you can bring back you can bring back the 4 hours. So they actually lost. They actually gave the 4 hours to the Sunday. So I think probably that's what happened because these people from 9 to 9 on Monday to Friday. But on Saturday we close 6, and then Sunday we close at 5 o'clock. But Eric Adams got to go. Eric Adams got to go because of that reason. That reason alone. So is he doing Zumba? Okay, but the library is good, right? We got mopeds, we got bikes and stuff. So heading home now. I got bored, so I got real bored. So just want to come out tonight. So take care, everybody. Happy Tuesday evening, the 12th. Take care. Later.